Nature Breakthroughs with Dr. Wild Ben Goldman. Conversations with changemakers in a world gone mad. To discover what you need for personal, organizational, and societal change, get your free download of 3 ancient rituals smart entrepreneurs use to bounce back from shifts in the market and inside themselves. Go to www.naturebreakthroughs.com.
Yes, you pull them till they bite down. Find the lies that you built from my doubts. I don't want money, I don't want cars, I just wanna be free.
How you doing?
Fantastic, thank you.
That's great. That's better than good.
Yeah, it's Monday. Love Mondays.
How come you love Mondays?
Just a fresh start to the week. It's just always like really exciting, like to get a fresh start to a new week and new opportunities and get back in the groove.
That's good. So welcome, Chad Weller, to the Nature Breakthroughs podcast. You're my second guinea pig.
Great to be on the show.
You're a high performance coach, right?
Yes.
And what does that mean?
A high performance coach is basically, I help people achieve high performance in all levels of their life, their personal development, finance, career, and health. So I'm a high performer myself. I'm a former professional athlete. So I live the high performance lifestyle through trials and triumphs. And I truly believe I have set a system to choose to be a high performer each day. And that's where I really align with my clients of, simply choosing to step in and take their lives to the next level. I had to do that day in and out in order to be in the career I was in as a professional athlete. What
kind of athlete?
I was a professional ultramarathon runner. So I was running distances 100 miles around the world.
Wow. And you were competing internationally?
Yes.
How many races?
In 7 years, I did 39 races. So they anywhere from 50K to 50 miles, 100K, and up to 100 miles. So it depends if I was in Argentina or in Asia, here in the States, it all just depends.
So are a lot of your clients athletes?
No, I would say I have maybe one of my clients is an athlete. Yeah.
So I'm, the focus of these podcasts is on the subject of like change, change in the world, change in people's lives. And, so I guess your life is, your work is focused on helping people, change in some way.
Yeah, 100%. I've gone through incredible changes in my life. And that's where I really got into this career. I've had a coach myself for 5 years, and choosing to change and want to change is scary, and change different directions like really quickly in order just to be alive today. So I made a lot of bad choices. And when I started to make better choices and was open to the change, it made my life a lot easier and simpler.
You were making bad choices when you, as a professional athlete?
No, before I was a professional athlete, I was addicted to drugs and alcohol. I was a model. I traveled around the world for eight years. I was in a nightclub business in South Beach, and was hanging around the wrong people, hanging out with celebrities, and got addicted to drugs and alcohol, and making a lot of bad choices. Really afraid of change. Really afraid of like my identity. I was lost. And 2009, I literally ran into a 50-foot brick wall, drinking and driving, and almost lost my life. And I was in a lot of trouble, cut out of the cars, knocked unconscious, multiple surgeries, broken ribs. I hit rock bottom. It was the biggest rock bottom of my life. And that was the biggest change I had to make. And making that change and facing that change, like I just had to look at myself in the mirror and say, this isn't working. Like I've almost died 4 times prior to that. So it was just like, you know when it's time to make that change. So I actually had to go get help. I went to AA meetings for 2 years, hired a coach, therapy, psychiatrist, all these things to really start identifying who I was. That led me actually into ultra marathon running. I found running was my key outlet to I had to reinvent myself. So talk about change. Like, people knew me in my town as being this party guy who threw parties and was a nightlife, to I had to show up one day and I was not that person anymore. So that was a big part of my transformation, and I've been sober 11 years next month. So
did when you I have a lot of questions. When you made that change, did you find that you kind of left your whole social circuit, or did you stay with the same people and just showed up differently?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I actually my first 3 years of sobriety, I was bartending in the nightlife. So I was bartending all night, serving alcohol, and we're talking about going into work at 10 and getting out at 5 or 6 in the morning. And just, I mean, it's a party scene. Like, there's no softness. There's no way around. Like, it's just right in your face. So I would go to 2 AA meetings a day. I had a sponsor, and, after hitting rock bottom, I just made it, like, I wanted to commit to my change. My change was, I was changing my habits. I was changing my thought process, like, really. It's a chemical imbalance. Like, when I was on drugs and alcohol, it caused me a lot of anxiety and depression. And I started to realize that was all unfolding. Like, oh, that was my problem for all those years. I just wasn't good at drinking and doing drugs.
Wasn't good at it.
I wasn't good at it. Yeah. I was not good at it.
Well, another question I have, I want to get back to that because well, let me ask you. So that, I know that when I've gone through major changes, I had a whole network of people associated with who I was. And then when I changed careers or my situation, 99% of those people disappeared from my life, or maybe even 99.9. I mean, basically starting, did you experience that or not really?
I did in different ways. It was such a small community I lived in, and still being in that industry, people started now seeing me and noticing me as the sober guy. Like, and I felt like they respected that. And of that, I started detaching myself to those people and what choices they were making, to attaching myself to my choices, empowering myself that I can be in this scene. Like, for 3 years, your first 3 years of sobriety is the first year is just, the first 6 months is just absolutely nuts. And to put yourself there bartending and throwing parties and still hanging out with celebrities, it was probably not the smartest thing to do. And it wasn't recommended by anybody, but I simply made the choice, and I was committed to my change. Like, I was committed to reinventing myself. But, to answer your question, I didn't hang out with those people. I worked with those people. So I made it a difference. Before, it was like working and hanging out was like all combined. And, I went in and treated it like work, right? Like, drinking was an option.
I mean, that sounds like you got like cojones. I mean, you're like disciplined it's kind of like you decided that you needed the toughest trial almost.
Yeah.
Is that true? Is that part of your personality?
That is part of my personality, because if you look fast forward into the ultra running and becoming a pro at the age of 32 and then running 100-mile distances, like, everybody was always asking, like, what was I running from? It was such extremes. I wasn't running from anything. I was running towards the change that I was trying to make in my life. I've gone through so many disappointments within myself and disappointing others, that it was time for change. And, you know, like living and connecting with purpose, and finding a direction and a healthier path. it was time.
It sounds like you're somebody that really pushes yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I guess that's probably not always the case with someone that runs 100 miles 39 times in 7 years. I mean, kind of saying it lightly, right?
Yeah.
Is that, do you know, does that have, I'm just wondering, is there a connection between that and how you like fell into the rough spot in the first place? Like,
yeah, I feel
like how did you slide into the slope of addiction? Was the driven nature that took you out of it part of what got you into it also?
Yeah, I really it goes back to my childhood of being lost and not connected to who I was. I was told at a very young age, the age of 7, that I had learning disability, ADD, and I was never going to be able to read, never going to be able to write. And I had adults telling me this, and they put me on medication at the age of 7. And I was on actually medication for 27 years. When I got into that accident, I was on 2,400 milligrams. So, you know, being told at that young, that's when I was programmed to saying that you were going to amount to nothing. And I always felt lost. I always felt like I was different from everybody. And, you know, I grew up in a great family, had 2 younger sisters, great mom and dad. And I was just really hard on myself from then. I was like, what did I do to be like this? Like, why did I end up this person who's in other small classrooms? And sports was always my outlet. And, you know, I always wanted to escape that society of people labeling me and judging me, especially my teachers and friends. And, you know, that's why I got into the modeling. And, you know, one thing led to another, still being lost inside and not really knowing who I was. Those were the things that really would have the biggest impact on me and my future of just not being connected.
I see. So what had the biggest impact was the feeling lost and disconnected. You still there?
What was the question? Yeah.
You were saying you were disconnected and then you disconnected.
How ironic. Yeah, no, just disconnected with myself, and drugs and alcohol gave me that. That was a big change for me, right? Because I didn't know who I was, so I was always changing, always trying to reinvent myself, because I was scared to go in and do the work, the inner work, and face my my sadness and so I would just go into self-destruction, and I would go into, to your point, is go into the extreme. And I really didn't understand how addicting the extremes were in the drug and alcohol world, that it would just like suck you in, and it was not nice. It was not fun. It came with a lot of complications.
Yeah, I've had a taste of it just in my family being, I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, have I? That I've had to go through a lot of recovery as a work as a parent with a child, one of my kids had a problem, and fortunately he's gotten through it and has been sober for over a year now, and he's still young. Wow. And but you know, I was in AA type meetings as a support in parent groups, and you know, and I mean, like anyone, at any minute it could happen to me too. It's not like I'm immune to those possibilities, but I've lived with it in my family, and you know, going when you're in it, it can feel, you know, desperate. Like, well, first of all, it's chaos. I don't know if it was for you, but
complete.
You know, just total chaos, and you never knew what was going to happen next, and You know, I know like when my son was in high school, 2 of his friends died from overdoses, and uh, you know, there was all kinds of stuff happening. I never knew what was going to happen next. And so I'm glad to hear that you're on the other side of that.
Thank you. Same with is it your son or?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I should talk. You know, it's funny. I want to talk about it, but I don't know if I should talk about it like on a, I mean, it's my story, but it involves someone else too.
Sure.
You know, so it's my story as a parent, and trying to help someone through the situation. But then if I say who, I'm also kind of outing the fact that, yeah. So I feel mixed about like, how do I talk about this? I mean, you know, I'm glad it wasn't me, but if it was me, then I could just talk about it, you know?
Right.
And,
I understand.
Yeah. So when you coach people, how do you bring that background into the coaching practice?
It's just life experience, right? So just understanding where they are in their lives and their journeys. And, you know, I like to share some of my stuff. I feel like it's a proper time. And I only share my story to give hope. Like, if I can do this, anybody can do this, right? Like, get sober and change your life and reinvent yourself, and simply make a choice to do it day by day. Like they teach you in AA, is one day at a time. So I just live for today, and that's all I have. How it turns over into working with somebody one-on-one or going to speak to an audience is just, you know, being an active listener and seeing what path they're on. I just got off a call and you know, one of my clients is, you know, struggling with some of the things I've experienced. And I feel, you know, especially for me having a coach too, if my coach is relating with me, I feel a lot more comfortable, and less like judgmental, or somebody's judging me. So I like to create that path with them. There's no judgment here. It's just me supporting them. And I don't tell them what to do. We create the path together, and I bring in accountability. That's the biggest thing as a coach, is being an active listener and offering accountability. And I simply like to share some of my stories and my endeavors, because only to lead them into being more optimistic or hope if they're down energetically. And we talk a ton about energy, and do a lot of energy work.
What does that mean?
Around understanding your energy, where it goes, around meditation, around mindfulness, around limiting beliefs, self-doubt. You know, our brains are fascinating. I had to go through all this work. I'm still going through all this work. I haven't reached any pinnacles, but, you know, a lot of the habits, like all my drugs and drinking and, you know, running, all the good things too are created from habits. The bad things are created from habits too. So it's how do you replace those bad habits with good habits? And all my clients, we start with a foundation there of what is your day-to-day? What are your good and bad habits? What would you like to change in your life? And without that foundation, it's really going to be hard to take somebody to a place they've never been before if they don't have that foundation.
Have you ever had to fire a client?
Yes.
How does that happen?
Just not showing up. Somebody who's just not in it. And this was very earlier in my career, and as a very young person as well. And, you know, I make a commitment with this individual to help them. And if I feel that they're not committed and open to receive the help or bring or even show up to the meetings or you know, the sessions, then I don't want to waste their time if they're not ready. Like, they were ready, and then they decided they weren't ready and they wanted to go do their own thing, which is totally fine. Like, they're on their own journey. But I did have to let them go. They, you know, have contracts, right? You sign an obligation to work with me, and I expect the same out of my clients.
So I was hoping we could be on the call with John, because I would be asking, I'm curious to hear about your relationship with with him as a business partner. Is that a central part of your business, or?
Not my high performance life coaching. It's separate. So with Zerkers, it's different with John and I's journey. A combination of the co-coaching and supporting. It's just fun. We're both heart driven. We're on the same mission to help people. He has a different way of looking at things, and the combination is it's fun and it's interesting because he's a great person. But we have, a lot of different goals, and in the coaching world too, like we connected 2 years ago, and the coaching world can be very lonely world because you're just working with one-on-one clients, you're speaking, or you're by yourself. So to have a business partner and somebody you can run off ideas or do a retreat with, or do group coaching or co-coaching, to have that interaction, it's really inspiring. We have a lot of meetings. We're working on a lot of different projects, and it's inspiring. He inspires me every day, and hopefully I do the same for him. And that's what's been really exciting about this career is there's like two entities in one, it's awesome because they're in different paths.
The two entities are the high performance coaching and then Zerkers.
Right, because one is mine, and I still bring my high performance coaching into Zerkers, my style of coaching, but it's, the missions are the same, but we have two coaches, and then we have, myself.
What is Zerkers? And you cut off at some point when we started the conversation, so just kind of starting over. So Zerkers is part of what you do. What is that?
Zerkers is a company around consciousness, and we're taking people that are like-minded and taking them to explore, going deeper into the world of consciousness and bringing people to arrive and show up differently. And John is very passionate around helping individuals see their consciousness or see how to get there. And I'm really passionate about coming in on the other side of making sure that they see that they're capable of being a high performer and being in that conscious mindset, understanding their energy. But Zerkers, we have a couple different things. We have retreats around Zerkers where we take people and we share experiences on a mental and physical level where they go out there and they challenge themselves. We also do, John and I do co-coaching where we take a client one-on-two, and we bring both of our expertise in, and we help that client grow exponentially in a very short time. And we have group coaching, and the group coaching is we have the Underground Warriors, which is a phenomenal group of individuals that come in, and we meet with them once a month, and we challenge them to, it's a community around growth, and they all support each other in that growth. And John and I are the leaders. So.
Your partner is John Christian.
Yes.
What's his? And full disclosure, I'm part of it. So
yes,
you're
one of our amazing clients.
I'm benefiting from your co-coaching and some of these other services. And what's John Christian's? He comes from it more from a. Well, when you say, you said something about wanting people to be conscious. Just to be kind of, how can you not be conscious? What are you talking about?
Sure. So conscious of more of understanding your surroundings, understanding how to connect with people, understanding energy, understanding the environments, the impact that we're having each and every day, each one of us, of how we can consciously show up a little bit better. And that's the meaning behind Zerkers, is how is a conscious state, meaning that if you show up right now and what choices you're making, how is impacting your life and those around you, or the environment or the world. And I think when you're subconsciously doing things, you're creating it doesn't really matter if I drink milk from a cow, or they're deforesting Brazil and there's fires, it doesn't really matter. Subconsciously, it's not affecting me, right? But when you bring that awareness and build that consciousness and get people connected to their responsibility of, how they're impacting themselves and the people around them and the planet, I think that's where we're looking to raise the awareness of consciousness. and understanding the unconscious. I grew up eating meat, and I've been vegan for 25 years. And I was very unconscious of I was doing as a kid. I didn't know how it was impacting the environment. That's a perfect example of now I've been conscious for 25 years. And I really feel that I'm doing my part in a more conscious state to making those choices to, protect the animals and the environment, and from my perspective and through my choices.
I'm interested in kind of tapping into this because, obviously there's a whole range of opinions, I guess, there's a whole range of lifestyles out there, right? And people have different priorities. And so there's not one kind of consciousness, right? Or do you think consciousness leads everyone to the same perspective? Or would you say, are there examples you think of people who are clearly not functioning in a conscious way versus people who are functioning in a conscious way that you can give as an example? Because it's hard. It's what you're talking about is very it's not tangible. It's very ephemeral. It's hard to put a finger on what it means.
Right, and that's the part behind. I talk a lot about in my coaching is the consciousness, right? Understanding how you only can control the moment, right? You can, like, right now. That's what you can be conscious of. Like you're here. So is everybody no, everybody thinks differently. Everybody, like you said, everybody has different priorities. It's just raising that consciousness of getting people to realize, okay, I'm making these choices because I'm doing this because, and it makes them more aware of their actions. I truly believe that's a part of consciousness of, okay, well, I just did this. I'm consciously knowing that I'm doing something to impact my life or somebody else's or the environment. And, when I go back to talking about earlier in this about energy, understanding your energy. How do you understand your energy? Well, consciously, you can understand, like, my energy's low right now. Well, why is your energy low? Because you thought 70,000 thoughts today, which we all do as humans, 70,000 thoughts running through our head a day. 83% of them are negative, 90% of them are repetitive. So you're in the subconscious state, which controls and takes you out of your conscious state, right? So I talk a lot about that in your energy and how to negotiate with yourself and your energy to align with being more conscious. I talk a lot about recalibrating, being more but being more clear with your thoughts, and making better choices, if that makes sense.
I've done, I guess what might call spiritual work, which is a lot of what you're talking about, being conscious, for about, I don't know, maybe 10 years now. And prior to that, I had nothing to do with it. And so I started, I'm 59, I guess I started when I was around 50, so I had a whole life of being unconscious, I guess, although I didn't think I was unconscious. And I would say that the main theme of all the different kind of schools that I've participated in, it is about being able to see. It's basically kind of about being able to see ourselves, or hear ourselves, or like be aware of our. I mean, the best word for it, I think, is our reactivity. How do we work on automatic pilot, and and this kind of work gives us some freedom from that automaticity. And but I also, part of me feels like it's not possible. It's a paradox. It's impossible. That it's not. There's something that's not real. There's this, and maybe it's my super ego just saying this, but there's It is my super ego saying that. And I can feel like so much energy in the super ego, which is, as you know, this like kind of early childhood voice in your head that you are so used to that you assume it's God Almighty, you know, that it's right. And, but there is, I can hear it saying, you know, just like you're my second podcast, the first podcast, at the end of it, I talked about something about, I used the word programming, like to get out of our programming. And my guest was like, programming? I'm not programmed. And I heard someone on, who did I hear say this the other day? I forget who said it, but, oh, I know who it was. I took, it's a whole nother story, but it was a psychologist. And I forget how he phrased this, but they call it one way of talking about it in what they call dialectical behavior therapy is it's a loop, you know, that goes on. And we're all in this loop always. And I mean, we're all in loops. We're all, you know, it's the kind of thing you're talking about. It's the opposite of consciousness. Let's say it's the loop of whatever that voice is, you know, whatever it is telling you what to do. And we're all doing it. And you know what how I'm doing it right now and how you're doing it right now. I mean, this is like, you know, it's so profound when you sit back and realize it. Like, what's the most obvious loop that I'm doing right now? And you're doing it too.
Listening?
Yeah, but what are you listening to?
You.
And what am I doing?
You're talking about your ego and energy and the loop.
Yeah, and how do you have any idea what the fuck I'm talking about?
Because I'm relating to what you're saying because we're talking about consciousness and energy.
Well, this is much simpler. It's because I'm speaking English, and you know English, and we know it from this early age, and now it's completely subconscious. You don't even realize that I'm making these noises that you're completely understanding purely through programming from an early age, right? I mean, it's incredible. So that kind of loop is what enables us to communicate. And in some ways, it enables us to think, or it shapes our thinking so profoundly. And we forget, you know, so that's why that's why I can feel that super ego saying, there's no such thing as this consciousness. It's like what do you call it? It's like this ideal. We're in the real world, and that's an ideal thing. Anyway, but it's a aspiration, you know.
Yeah. Well, it's a mind game too, right? So it's constantly, you can't control your subconscious thoughts or your ego, right? Or allow yourself to adapt to shutting it off, going into breath work or going into a meditation.
Well, I think some people would debate that. I agree with you that in my experience, I can't control my emotions. You know, I can't control my subconscious and stuff. But I think there are people who would argue that the more of this work that you do, the more you are in control of. You can reach states or levels of mastery where you have, you know, like you're less reactive. You have more control over how you respond to things, and over possibly even, you know, there's ways of where they talk about like cognitive behavior therapy and stuff where it's, you know, you have a thought and then you have an emotion and then you have an action. Like there's like people try to talk about this as though they're chains of events, and that there are ways of, you know, this is talking about the loop. There are ways of consciously intervening in the loop so that there is some control.
Yeah. And yeah, in those loops, you have the beta, alpha, theta, and, you know, going through the analytical minds, there's all kinds of different patterns that you can address with getting into subconscious and to conscious. I mean, there's there's so many different things. And yes, I love when people say that they disagree. And I think that's the job behind, like, going back to the original question is of this education. Like, I'm learning every day more and more about this stuff, and I'm trying to be more conscious, right, into a more positive state in alignment with where I'm going and how I'm getting there, thankfully. And it's just, I think if we could all be in a path of learning and growing and being more conscious, is that realistic? Absolutely not. But am I hopeful that, you know, things could change and there could be more people like yourself and who are surrounded with us that could educate people and inspire people to be more open to learning about this stuff? I think it would definitely have less impact on a negative impact on society and the world. And you know, even just addressing some of this stuff, as you said, going back to childhood, a lot of stuff that I do with my coach, we do a lot of inner self work, and we're looking to bring this into schools and teach this in schools, so kids don't have to go through what we went through, right? And I think there's so much of this, like, I didn't learn any of this stuff until I'm 43. I didn't learn anything like this until I was like 39, just tapped into it. Like, I just walked right into it. Like, what is all this stuff? This is pretty cool. This is helping me. And I think if people have that experience where they see it, it's helpful. It's positive, right? It's not scary. It can be if you fight it, right? But I think once you step into understanding meditation and you can shift your energy throughout the day, or notice a thought coming in, or that's there, that's arrived, that's not serving, how to change your frequencies. If you can, you know, learn how to do that, I think, or have at least one or two tools. That's what I do with my clients. I teach them how to empower themselves to redirect and realign their energy. Does it work for everybody? But
I mean, I've had, well, two things I want to say. One is, have you ever watched the video of Ken Wilber messing with his brainwaves? You know Ken Wilber? You ever heard of him? He's like a guru of integral theory and integral coaching and stuff. And there's a video of him that shows how he can go from alpha to beta. You know, he's all plugged in, and he can actually do it. So and they've shown that there's a famous monk named Matthew Ricard, I think, who also, they've put him into a MRI and stuff and can show that. And there's something else I was going to say. Oh, I know, which is, you said it's not scary. I mean, I don't consider myself a coach, and I don't really have an ambition to be a coach, but I do work with people, you know, like with my Wild Call Weekend and stuff. And I have found, I mean, especially, you know, everyone has trauma in life, and there's more some, and I think, you know, one of the things that happens when you do this kind of work is you start kind of peeling back the onion, and there's often difficult things underneath, and it can be scary. And I've noticed, as someone that has tried to help other people, like, I'm the kind of person that wants to kind of go right into the issue, and, you know, I can get a sense, oh, I know what's going on here. But if there's trauma associated, I mean, this is why people, you know, study and get degrees in psychology and stuff. If there's trauma involved, you often can't take someone directly into it, or you know what I mean? People have to kind of find their own way, and there can be a lot of, you know, just when I first started meditating, for example, I needed to, I felt like I was like a horse that needed to be broken. Like, I couldn't just do a little dose of it. I went and did like a 10-day retreat, and it, you know, it was painful. I mean, you know, really painful. But if I just did a light version, it didn't hold. It didn't stick. So, I mean, I think, who said this? the guy that wrote the Four Agreements, I like this quote. It's something like, it's something like you can be happy or sad. It takes the same amount of work, you know?
Yeah.
And doing this work can be easy or hard. You can make it easy or hard. I don't know exactly where I'm going, but sometimes if you make it easy, it's going to take longer, you know, or sometimes if it's hard, I don't know. It's not, I don't think there's one way that it happens.
Right. And I don't think there's one place that you eventually show up either. Right. So it's like, where does that taking you? But I think just showing up in a state of, you know, meditation, it took me months and months to understand meditation and shutting off the noise and understanding the pineal gland and the prefrontal cortex and my chakras and aligning all my energy, and still learning a ton. But I think just being able to go in and be able to shut it off, it's such a rewarding and empowering thing as humans that we are capable of doing that. And, you know, even teaching that, I see now they're teaching meditation in schools now. If I would have had meditations, like everything would have been completely different.
Maybe,
I think,
but I mean, I have kids, and one of them went to a school that had meditation or mindfulness. They didn't call it meditation. And, you know, it doesn't necessarily work for teenagers. They're not necessarily open to it. There's a lot of this kind of work that, you know, you have to have a certain level of maturity, or it's got to be, you know, it's got to be done skillfully so that it's age appropriate and stuff. And one question I have for you is, how does let's say like something like meditation, how does mindfulness work relate to, how does that cause high performance? Like, what's the connection?
It allows yourself to believe and empowers yourself to get there. I think when somebody's focusing on being a high performer, and a lot of my clients are really successful and they've reached, you know, a pinnacle or the high point of maybe their careers, let's say, as an example, and they have that figured out. Other things, their relationships have suffered, their personal self has suffered, their health has suffered. So it's how to understand, how do you raise your standard in all aspects of life to become a high performer? High performer is a choice to live each day to your fullest and be at your best. And I think as you allow meditation to come in, it empowers you to take things a little bit slower and know your energy and where you're directing your energy. And a lot of my meditations, what they do for me, different for everybody else, is it sets the intention. I always set my intention at the end of my meditation of giving myself an opportunity to be a high achiever today, to be a high performer, to do things that, you know, that I'm capable of doing, but it's going to take work and put in the effort. I think a lot of us, we go on, you know, like we just get into our habits and our routines. We just hit autopilot, and we're listening to all this stuff around us, the news, the environment, the traffic, the noise. We're disconnected from nature, like all these different things. And I think what meditation, I'll speak for myself, has done for me as being a high performer is really just allowed me to connect with myself, connect with my energy, and to allow myself that I trust and believe that I'm capable of a high performer. And when we're talking about all four of those pillars, that's a lot of energy. It takes a lot of energy to raise your standard every day and want to be better and perform at a higher level. But that's what I instilled in myself as being, you know, somebody who ran 200 miles a week. I was running 50 to 60 hours a week. My long runs were 60 to 67 miles on a Saturday. That's commitment, right? So meditation is part of my commitment. High performance is part of my commitment to myself. And that's what I share with my clients, because I've proved to myself that I'm capable of doing it. If I can quit drinking, doing drugs, that's the biggest one. If I can go out and run 100 miles, if I can be vegan for 25 years, if I can do all these things that align with my purpose and my mission, and I can start to understand my energy, I truly believe that anybody else can do it. It's just about sharing the tools, and in meeting somebody, like what works for me is not going to work for you, right? I don't expect you to go out and run, 200 miles a week or be vegan or any of these things. But, I would meet you where you are and we would talk. We would start with simply just meditating for 1 minute, understanding. All my clients who go in and meditate for 1 minute, and I have a lot of men with, masculinity and egos, and they're really successful, and they're like, I don't even bring up meditation until like session 6 or 7. I let them ask me, you talk about meditation, Chad. I think I want to learn about meditation. Now I have their attention. I never come to you and I would say, Ben, hey, let's start meditating. You were like, That's what somebody did to me. And I was like, fuck you. Like, I don't want to meditate. What's meditating going to do for me? I'm fine. But it's my medicine. It's how I set my intention. I meditate a bunch during the day. I reset my energy, align with, with where I'm going and how I'm getting there. I talk about moving slower, but that's a mentality I used to talk about when I had my coach for my running. When you're running ultras, you can't go run an ultra fast and have that mentality of getting through it. I mean, you're not going to make it even halfway. So it's the same mindset as a high performer. It's like, I'm not going to go through my day as fast as I can. It doesn't make any sense. I'm going to be more mindful, approach things, assess things, be more proactive instead of being reactive.
Do you think you can control your energy? This is the same kind of question. Like, can you control emotion? Can you control subconscious? Can you control your energy?
I'm learning to adapt to understanding my energy and then reassessing it and like realigning my energy. I believe that we can control our energy to a point. But again, going back into the subconscious and all the science that's behind it, it's like you have no control there. And that's where we spend most of our time subconsciously, unfortunately. But I think that's the parallel between coming into a meditation, or I call it recalibration or checking into your energy. If I feel myself like going backwards or thinking about like a bad time in my life or my past or thinking too far in the future, I simply just address it. I call it the 10-second rule. I allow it, I see it, and I move on and I say, okay, well, let's get back into the present moment. How do I do that? I take 10 breaths, go into gratitude, and then I refocus, realign my energy. So that's controlling. Yeah.
One thing I find super interesting is how, the notion that that being conscious is almost same equivalent of being present, let's say. And it's about like the present moment, right? That's a big concept or perspective in this kind of consciousness world. And this is just the way I think. I find it interesting that is almost like advocating having ADHD. It's like, what is attention deficit if not just a kind of like, now, only like, in fact, one of my kids has ADHD. We're diagnosed with it. So one of the best definitions I've heard of ADHD is they call it time myopia. Have you ever heard of that concept? Yeah. A guy named Barkley, I forget his first name. And so the idea is that one's awareness of time is very present, is very focused on the present. And so it's so peculiar that that's like a goal of consciousness, or it's a goal of this work. And the way out that I've heard that I love to think about is, there's this, I guess, parable with the Buddha where, I don't know if you've heard this, that some of his disciples challenge him and say, and I don't know if this actually happened, but this is how I remember, that they're like, yo, Buddha, how can you be enlightened when you teach us that no one can be enlightened unless everyone is enlightened? And the Buddha says, well, I don't know what the Buddha said, but I think the lesson was that his sense of presence was so expanded that it included basically all time. And so that he, in his present, everyone was enlightened because he could see that far. He was living that far in the future, that far in the past. It was all part of his present. I don't know. I love that. That gives me solace to just kind of see that range of that being present isn't defined as like a second or a millisecond or a minute. It's not that kind of a thing, right? That our sense of time is constructed also.
Right.
It's part of the loop.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Amazing. Fascinating stuff. And I think even just talking about it just gets me really excited. I'm learning so much, even just from this moment we're having, right, in this conscious space. But I think this is what I'm going back to, of being conscious, like having these conversations about these things, or, in my old self were meaningless. I had no connection to them. I had no interest in them until you actually are in it and you're doing the work and you're doing the meditations, or you're learning about beta, alpha, theta, delta, and you're understanding actually how we're integrated and how we are programmed and how things work and shift. And we can control as much as we can control, and we have no control of some things. So it's just understanding that and being able to be in more of a conscious place where you can raise energies and energetics around more positive. We're not talking about anything negative here. Like, we're not talking about murdering somebody or killing somebody when we're talking about subconscious or unconscious, but it's also tied to it too. People say that they've gone and done these things subconsciously. I know when I was choosing my drugs and alcohol, I was probably conscious, but there was a lot of subconscious things going on in my head that were just like, yeah, go do that. This is who you are. This is the person you've become. You're this person. So that's subconsciously leading me right down that path. And unfortunately, in that world of abuse and addiction, or even, told that you have ADD or ADHD, these are things that a lot of us don't have control over. I was powerless over drugs and alcohol. That's the first thing you learn as soon as you walk into an AA meeting. You're powerless over this drug and alcohol. And, I'm powerless of figuring everything out. I don't think that's of existence of us as humans to figure out everything. It's impossible. But I think if you figure out what works for you, and you can empower yourself and grow and be happy and be okay with who you are. I talk a lot about self-acceptance. That's really helped me spiritually and being okay with who I am. Even though my childhood, I told you I was, told I was going to be this. I was told by my teachers I was going to work in a Honda factory for the rest of my life, or it was going to be, which is nothing wrong with that. But, I've all these adults telling me all these things, and I was just like, it was just making me so angry. Like, fuck you. Like, you don't know where I'm going. That's why I'm here today. Like, I've been an entrepreneur for 12 years. Like, and being, as you know, entrepreneur world, it's not pretty. You're on a roller coaster. You got to make a lot of, make a lot of mistakes before you get to the, a level, and then you make some more mistakes and you get to the next level. So it's all about self-empowerment there.
And I also find it, another thing that's the aspect of what you're talking about that has been hard for me to learn, but among the most important things for me to learn is that, it's about being conscious of our bodies. It's not just conscious as a mental thing, but it's about being conscious of our heart, of our emotions. And I think the modern world often focuses almost totally on the head, you know, so whatever those people were telling you as a kid, they were kind of all focused on how your brain was working at that age, and they weren't helping you, you know, well, and I think a lot of what a lot of people need is to tap in more into their physicality and into their emotions, and you know, that's as much, that's 2/3 of the work. Or, you know, if there's like your kind of spirit and your mind and your heart and your body, you know, the mental part is just, you know, a quarter at most, a quarter of what you got to work on.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I think we've done an hour. And what else? How can people get in touch with you? I mean, how can people work with you?
Yeah, the best thing to do is go to my website at chadweller.com. There will be a little 60-minute breakthrough session where that allow you to sign up with me. You have 60 minutes with me. We get to know each other, build some rapport, and just create whatever comes out of that session. That's the best way to get in contact with me. Also on that website, there's all my social media outlets, videos and content that I post every day. And, you know,
are there particular kinds of people that you want to work with, or people facing particular issues that you feel particularly like that's your niche?
Yeah, I think people are just looking to understand and how to create a path that's going to take them somewhere. And I think energetically, I love connecting with people. That's why I do the 60-minute breakthrough session. I'm all about energy. And I think if our energies match, then we can go places that you never thought were possible. So I'm big on energy. So anybody who's open to learning and growing and adapting and learning new tools to take them to a place, that really excites me. And that really excites that person on the other end. I've been blessed to work with the most incredible people, including yourself, people that are open to learning and growing because they have this vision. And I know from experience with my coach for the last 5 years, I would not be anywhere where I am today without her helping me get clear in my vision and understanding my purpose and creating this mission. And it's just a wonderful thing. When I speak, you can also go on my website and hire me to speak. I speak a lot about my story, sharing my story and how it's integrated into who I am who I am today. And, you know, I speak all over the world. My book will be done in July. So that'll be another way of learning some of the trials and triumphs and understanding that you can create breakthroughs in your life if you're willing to.
Do you know what it's called yet, the book?
No, I'm still working on the name, and it's coming close. I'm diving into doing some deep work on myself, but it's coming close to having the name.
So when are you going to get me to run 100 miles? We haven't even talked about that yet.
Let's do it. Let's start training. I have a 50K coming up in May. You're welcome to come out here to Colorado and do it with me.
I'm in a state where I am actually, it's like rehabilitation. I have to get back to walking again. That's really kind of where I'm at. I had an injury about a month ago.
Oh, wow.
You know, you get older. You got to adjust.
And what's crazy about those distances, I've ran with 71-year-olds. I've ran with 65-year-olds. It's 100-mile races. It's just fascinating that it's a very small community, and it's running those distances are very spiritual. I hallucinate. I go through so many ups and downs. I go to the darkest places, but you find a way out. And it's really to see other people out there on that journey with you, and people of a lot older, and they're out there doing. It's fascinating what the mind and body can do. It's truly fascinating. Give me a lot of hope in different areas of my life.
I'm inspired. You're an inspiration, Chad.
Thank you very much, Ben. Likewise. You're bringing out some good energy around me, because whenever I talk about my story, I seem to go back to my story and kind of share like how I almost like relive it. So it brings out natural emotion, and I could feel your natural emotion from my emotion, and your energy just went through the roof. I'm getting chills. It was awesome. Like you have something cool here.
You know, if I just start saying what I think as opposed to asking questions, that seems to provoke people into saying things more than asking the questions. And
that's and just keep it like that. Keep it natural flowing, like you were saying before. And I think that's where you're really tapped into, like, your energy shift. I've never seen this energy in you. I'm just like, it made me want to give more energy and give more to the show. And you pulled it out of me because I was connecting to your energy. I think when you're drawing into your energies and just shooting off what you're thinking, right? That's like your show. I think that's when you look at somebody like who'd you mention the other day?
Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he just shoots shit out. Like he just shoots. Like there's no filter there. Like,
yeah, I haven't watched tons of what he's done, but I do notice that he's very positive in the people that I watched him talk to. He's always kind of stroking them, and he's not like arguing with them.
Yeah,
He's not
right.
disagreeing. He's not disagreeing. He's always agreeing with them.
You want to, yeah. And I see that as being you want to, like, yeah, you definitely. And I felt that with you, like,
because my nature is to disagree. So I'm always like debating, but that's not what he does.
Right. And that could be your style too. I think if you debate a little bit, which I felt you're debating a little bit, which was good. It got me thinking, but you did it with a positive, like you weren't coming at me like I'm debating now, and this is going to be terrible, and I'm going to piss you off and make you like leave. I think you did a really good job of opening up that debate of being like, hey, what do you think? And this is what I think and feel. But it came from a good place. It came from like your heart, right? So, yeah, I really enjoyed it. I love, especially talking about this stuff. I think it's so important in the society now. And I think we have, as humans, if we could all do a little part in this, and that's behind Zerkers, that's behind my mission, is to change. And I see that behind like this show. I mean, that could be a whole direction itself. Wild Call Weekend. I mean, what the hell, Wild Call Weekend? That's the whole, big purpose behind it, right? Is to bring awareness. It
is. And one change that I can hear in myself is, I remember when I had a big career doing environmental work, and the higher I got in that world, the more I was exposed to these kind of like spiritual type environmental people. And I remember just thinking, oh my God, I didn't have much patience for them, because I was such a street fighter, and it was like, we got to stop this community from getting polluted. We got to stop this evil corporation or this thing that was happening. It was like a pitched battle, everything I was engaged with. And then I would encounter these kind of like religious types, and it felt so philosophical and so just not engaged. And I can't believe that that's kind of where I am now, that I'm not engaged. I'm not doing any street fighting. I'm just totally doing the spiritual stuff. It kind of like, how did I feel, I can feel my super ego. I feel, it's confusing to me. I don't know how I got to here from there, but that happened. And I agree I agree with you that there needs to be people need to shift their consciousness, I guess, is the only way to talk about it, or we're doomed. I mean, I really kind of feel very doomed. I feel a lot of pessimism kind of for the world unless people start behaving differently, and that the only way to get people to behave differently is through this kind of consciousness raising.
Did you watch the Oscars last night?
No.
Joaquin Phoenix?
I didn't. What happened?
If you get a chance, I'll find it. I'll send it to you, or just go to Facebook. Joaquin Phoenix, he won Best Actor for Joker, and he gave this 4-minute speech, and it's all about what we're talking about. I've watched it 7 times today. It's amazing. It's just blowing up the internet. So you can find it on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, it's fascinating. He really used that. I mean, how many people watch the Oscars? Like 20 million people. I mean, he used that stage to share what he shared, and I'm interested to hear what you think about it. It was very powerful and really in alignment with what we're saying.
I thought his performance in Joker was amazing.
It's insane. Yeah. Insane.
You know, it's also there's an aspect of the whole kind of Hollywood culture that makes me, and probably I think a lot of people, well, it does 2 things. Some people, you know, they're fans and they glom onto it, and then other people kind of discount it. Or there's a tendency, you know what I mean? There's kind of, whenever anyone's elevated above everybody else, there's a kind of, it's easy to shoot them down. It's easy, you know, they're like on a pedestal. So but I'll be interested to see it. But, you know, part of me, I also find that interesting that you, in your story, you know, there's an aspect of it that you were getting wasted with celebrities, and that has a kind of like there's a aspect of that makes it, well, I guess that's part of the seduction, let's say, is that I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but that whole celebrity world has this seductiveness that, I'm not sure where I'm going with this, other than
I got you.
In some ways, what we're talking about with this consciousness stuff is the opposite of that. And yet we all love that too. We all love to be seduced. You know, we all love, you know, it's
exciting.
It can be exciting, and it can be like beautiful and glamorous, and, you know, it can make our blood, you know, run. And so I guess the question is how do we, I mean, one question is, can there be can consciousness exist in that realm?
Yeah, I think once you watch this one with, you know, like when you watch him speak, Joaquin, and then, you know, Bradley Cooper has been talking about his sobriety. You've got Brad Pitt sober, and there's like all these sober, like, celebrities now that are in this more conscious state and bringing, I just think they have a bigger stage, and will it all be conscious? And no, it's not a big, you know, it's not reality. It's not attainable or realistic. But if there's more people, like you look at Billie Eilish, she has like 52 million followers on Instagram. She just told them to all go vegan. I mean, that's awesome. But there's also some, you know, someone her age is probably going and doing a bunch of heroin and telling kids that drugs are cool. Like, there's just so many different aspects of the celebrity and sobriety and parties. But I think the stages they have, and that's what I learned is being in where I was, is from hanging out with those celebrities, choosing to go do whatever I did with them. And the people I've had, you know, I wouldn't say the privilege of tapping into both, but that world of drugs and alcohol was not a privilege. But I don't regret anything I did, because I wouldn't be the person I am today. I'm writing my book now, and I asked my coach, she's helped me write it, and I was like, can I put the celebrity's name in there? And she's like, absolutely not.
Yeah. Not
in those chapters.
You know, it's funny, in my book, I picked little fights with people, and in the back of my mind, I wonder if that's going to be a bad thing. You know, like, there's certain celebrities, intellectual celebrities that I mention, and as I think about them, there's only some of them that I could ask to read the book, because I didn't say particularly flattering things about them, you know.
Yeah.
But it's how it came out. So.
Yeah. There's a good book that just came out with Russell Brand. Are you familiar with him?
Yeah, I mean, I know who he is, but
yeah, but his book just came out, and he's doing a tour called Recovery. And how old's your son, if you don't mind me asking?
He's 19.
Cool. If you ever want somebody to talk to, like, please, I'm always here. I love like just listening their stories and sharing my story. It seems to go a long way.
Yeah. And I would love to do one of my Wild Call weekends geared to recovery stuff. And I'm going to interview more. I have people lined up who are in that world of work, of providing recovery services and stuff like that.
Cool. Well, if there's anything I can do, just let me know.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
100%. Cool, man. Well, I enjoyed this.
Yep, me too. Thank you for talking with me, and we'll talk really soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thanks for listening to the Nature Breakthroughs podcast with Dr. Wild Ben Goldman. To discover what you need for personal, organizational, and societal change, get your free download of 3 ancient rituals smart entrepreneurs use to bounce back from shifts in the market and inside themselves. Go to www.naturebreakthroughs.com.